The CW Twin Cities presents See What's Now, your entertainment news source.
Hey everybody, Jon Foss, CW Twin Cities, and I'm very excited because I'm talking with Miss Shannan Paul. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So you are a comedian, radio host, podcast host, voiceover artist, former professional athlete. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, well, obviously I'm very good at keeping busy.
Yeah.
And on top of all of that, I have a 10-year-old boy who I spend a lot of time chasing right now. So I'm just really fortunate because I've had lots of jobs. So to be able to go now, I can kind of, hodgepodge all of these different jobs into basically a career, even though it's kind of a mosaic.
Yeah.
I know I'm very blessed that I get to do that because most of what I do is I go and I get to play with people and talk about fun things, and everybody does not have that latitude to do that for a living.
And I think the craziest part is that you started in the corporate world.
Yes.
How did you go from corporate to basically having the craziest life ever?
I used to be, I was always the promotions director or the marketing director someplace or working in public relations. And when I moved here to Minnesota, one of my good friends who still works in banking and corporate stuff, he and I used to go to a comedy club all the time. And
you were like, I can do that.
I was not. I was
Okay.
I was the exact opposite. I was, I was doing some writing on the side for a local publication and hanging out, but we just loved comedy. And my friend Michael, he was the one, and this was when I was still, in college, he was the one going, "You're funny, you should do that. You're funny, you should do that." And I'd go, "I just tell stories. I don't, I make you guys laugh, but that's not what I do."
Yeah.
And then finally we were at Acme one night and I did the whole line of, "I don't do that. I just tell stories and make you guys laugh." And he's like, "Well, what do you think they're doing?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "You know what? You're right." And so I was in college and I was in a writing class, and you were supposed to write something funny, and so instead of writing a one act or a monologue, I wrote a comedy set.
All right.
And then did it in my class, and then didn't die, and had my friends talk me into trying it out at Acme, and I did their open mic years and years and years ago and didn't die, and went, okay, I think I could do this. And so now it's been, I think we're coming up, if you count all my open mic years, 18 years. Wow. I think I've been doing this. So,
well, don't they say that in general, people's biggest fear isn't dying? That's number 2, but number 1 is public speaking.
Right.
So,
yeah. And
so
so
you're like,
nobody
I'm
wants to
taking
do
this
it.
on.
Yeah.
Let's
I'm
do
glad that people don't want to do it, because that's part of the reason why I get paid to go and talk in front of people.
It weeds out the competition.
Exactly. I'm glad it scares people. I'll do it.
How long was your first set? 3 minutes? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
3 minutes.
And then you just keep adding on after that?
Right. And then it's also, I think what some people don't notice is when you're writing things, not only do you write new material, sometimes your old material just evolves and changes, or you edit it. So there might be a time period where you write a bunch of new stuff, but instead of it just adding onto your time, it kind of maybe replaces things. Because it's like when the actors say they have to find their voice. I think that's a lot of what you do as a comedian. My delivery might be similar, but my perspective is a lot different from when I started. I remember when I first started in comedy, that was before I had my son, and a big part of my act was about the fact that I don't have kids, and that's when I thought I never wanted to have kids. And now I'm in a whole different place in my life, and I'm talking about, no, I have this kid, and here's what it's like, and how it's changed, my perspective, how it's changed my family's perspective, even the way I interact with my mom. So you just kind of adapt and change and have different things to talk about, hopefully.
How long is your set now?
Usually it depends on where you see me, but I'm usually doing 45 minutes to an hour now.
Oh, wow.
So
That's impressive.
It's a long time if you listened to me tell my
Cool.
stories.
That's cool. And of course, being a comedian, you also have to be, it just makes sense, a professional football player, right?
And that was
How
funny.
does that tie into the mix here?
That was when I started playing football when I still lived in Austin, Texas.
Okay.
And I always was into sports, when I was younger, and was kind of like that gym rat type of girl. And I am also the kind of person, I don't like it when you tell me I can't do something. So we were doing a morning show in Austin, Texas, and my co-host at the time, he goes, we were interviewing some people that were on the women's professional football team in Austin.
Okay.
And they were getting ready to do tryouts. And I'm like, I'll go try out. And they were like, no, you couldn't, and they're this. And I'm like, oh, really?
You're like, now it just got real.
Right.
I'm doing this.
So I went and I tried out and I made the team. And
Cool.
then
What
when
position?
I'm a defensive back.
Okay.
I'm a defensive back. So
All right.
mostly strong safety is what
All
I
right.
play. And when I moved back up here to Minnesota, we have one of the longest running women's professional football teams in the country here. So the Minnesota Vixen, and they're still my heart. I still love all those women that are over there. So the Minnesota Vixen, I came and I was very blessed to be able to play with those great women for 2 seasons before I found out that I was pregnant, and that seemed like a good reason to not play football.
Yeah, that's a very good reason.
Yeah.
So how many years total did you play?
So 3.
Okay.
I played for 3.
That's cool.
So it was fun, and then they wanted me to come back after I'd had the baby, and it's great, but it's time consuming.
Yeah.
It's time consuming. So I miss it though. So I still make sure I go and see a bunch of the games I can every season, and football's still a sport, and it's another one of those things that people don't know it exists, even though they've been doing it season after season after season, and these women are really committed. It's just another one of those things that people go, oh, I didn't know about it. Or I say I play football and people presume because of the one thing that they knew about, because there was all that buzz about that lingerie football league for a while. So they're like, I'm like, no, I did not play on the, I guess that's a compliment that you don't find the idea of me in my underwear loathsome, but no, I played like for the Vixen, which is full contact, full pad. I mean, leaving it all out there on the field. So it's cool. I'm glad I got to do, it's another thing that I can say, oh, I did that. It's like when people go, oh, well, I ran a marathon, and I did a half marathon, and people are like, well, do you want to do a full? I'm like, I get to say I ran a half. I'm good, because most people haven't done it.
So
right?
Have you done that? No. All
right.
Yeah. Are you a Vikings fan? Now, I mean, you've been.
I am not. I am a Packers
Arizona,
fan.
Texas. You're a Packers
I'm a Packers
fan?
fan.
How'd that happen?
When I moved here,
Yeah.
I moved here before the Arizona Cardinals were really getting started, so
Yeah.
I didn't have an emotional attachment to any team in Arizona. And this is gonna sound bad, but it's Minnesota's fault that I'm not a Vikings fan.
Because we sucked?
Well, not only did you suck, but most Minnesotans that was when everybody was real fair weather fan. Like y'all were all wounded still about people missing kicks and stuff, and we're just really salty.
That never goes away.
I know. So you guys were really salty
still
at the
there.
Vikings, right?
Yeah.
And so that's why this attitude right now, John.
But
that's
next year
exactly
when we
why.
win the Super Bowl, then
Look at
it's
that.
all,
See, that's what I'm
clean
saying.
slate.
You guys were just so fickle on your own team,
Yeah.
and then I met some Packers fans, and they were like, "Do
well,
or die."
They've had a little more success than us.
But it shouldn't matter. I'm like, so many of these things are supposed to be based upon, the way that you feel about a team. So if most of my friends don't even like their team, it was really hard for me to get on board with them. So I've just been a Packers fan, and it just got good to me. So now it's hard to change. But I live here in Minnesota. I want you guys to be happy. So I would be happy if, I'm not one of those Packer fans where I'd want the Vikings to lose at all costs.
Yeah.
I'm tired of living in a state where y'all are all moody at your own football team. So I would be fine if you won something, just so that there would be joy in the Twin Cities for a little while.
This year.
Okay.
It's going to happen.
All right, I got you.
Awesome. All right, so April is Black Women's History Month.
Which I had to look up, and I know that sounds really bad. I thought that was like one of those made-up holidays, like Pie Day or Donut Day or, kind of thing. So I'm glad that it exists, because I knew about, of course, everybody knows about Black History Month in February.
Yep.
You know about, there's Women's Month and things like that. So now that we are even getting more focused, I'm cool with that.
Cool. And being a Black woman, a minority in the comedy scene, number one, is that pretty unique? And number two is, what's it like? I mean, is it pretty accepting? What's your experience been?
I think like being a person of color in a lot of industries is becoming more accepted. And when I first started, it was kind of like, I don't know if you've seen the movie Highlander. It was very much like there can be only one. And so it was, oh, so you are the Black woman that does this now. And there was more of an expectation of, then you should have this kind of act, or here's what's popular. And I think that happens with a lot of industries where, and especially in the entertainment industry, it's like, oh, no, here's the expectation, or you're gonna play this particular role and there's only these kind of roles that are available. So if you're the Asian character, you're this way. If you're the Hispanic character, you're this way. If you're the Black woman, you're that. And so when I first started in comedy, it was a lot of people giving you advice and saying that they liked you, but I remember the advice that I would get was, people seemed to think that I was gonna be a lot more BET Comic View than I was just organically.
Yeah.
And so the advice was, well, this is really popular, why don't you make your act more like that? And I was new, and so I remember thinking about it going, well, maybe I should, and then going, well, that's not really me, and I don't feel comfortable doing that, and that's great if that's what you're into. It just wasn't what I was. And so I kind of just tried to stay the course and figure out who Shannan was as a comedian and stay with that. But there were times even when I doubted myself. I was like, well, maybe I should have taken that advice because look, so-and-so's got a movie, or they made this thing, or this seems really popular, or who's touring and they seem like they have all this stuff, and obviously that's great. And you know, you just power through it, and I stayed with it. And you know, I'm to the point now that I get to be authentic and be myself and not have to worry about it. But it took a while, like of second guessing yourself. And that's what when people ask me for advice now and they say they want to be a comedian, I go, you really got to figure out what drives you and what motivates you to do it. Because it's obviously not one of those, you're going to be uber famous right away, or you're going to make all of this money and everybody's going to love you. It can be a grind. So you have to really have that reason why what sparks you to want to go out there and be in comedy and do all of these things, and what do you find funny? And that's what gets you on stage night after night after night, and it'll keep you in the game for a long period of time.
Yeah, and on top of comedy, I mean, with your background, you've done so many things that are unique and outside of the box, and just very brave, and a lot of people probably wouldn't have the guts to do it. Were there Black women in your life that inspired you, or that you looked at as mentors to have that type of bravery, or is that just something that you felt like you were born with?
I think that it's both. I think that we'll start with like my mom and because I grew up in Phoenix, Arizona, a single mom, and she worked really hard to take care of me and my younger sisters. But it was also her instilling in us this: you can be an individual. You don't have to be like anybody else. If people think that you don't fit in, that's their problem, not yours. And saying that it was okay that we didn't have to be whatever this model was, like I went to a private Christian grade school, but I got there not because we had any money, but because my mom got a job at the grade school, and so that my sisters and I could go there. And she was just very, instead of going, okay, you need to follow the pack, her advice was always, no, let them follow you. And if you don't fit in, that's okay. Yeah. So be comfortable with being the weird one. And a lot of the things that I grew up, like, people are surprised when they find out that I'm such a geek and into all of this, sci-fi and fantasy books, and read all of these things and have all these comic books. But like the first movie my mom ever took me to was Star Wars, when I was a kid. And the books that I grew up reading, she was okay with me going, oh, well, here's these Isaac Asimov books around and all these other things. And if you are into comic books or cartoons, go ahead and be you and do you and be all right with all of that. So I just got kind of used to being the weird one when I was a young age and going, well, I'm not going to fit in anyway, and what does fit in even mean? Yeah. And then if you look at like popular people and role models, I feel like, yes, there's people that are in comedy or people that are in entertainment that I look up to now, and I go, I'm really happy that they're there and that's what they do. But I mean, I was a writer, I was a book reading writer kid, when I was in high school. And so it was people like Maya Angelou that I looked at. And I think that a lot of what she said too was really being yourself and not being afraid to try something new or to be a little bit different. And I remember, because Maya Angelou, I don't know if you're familiar, but she's one of those people, she's great at quotes. She's great at quotes. You can fill your whole brain full of inspirational Maya Angelou quotes. And one of the ones she said is, she was talking about how people will forget what you said and they will forget what you do, but they won't forget how you make them feel. And I think that plays a lot into what you do as a comedian, is that people might forget the exact words of my jokes. They might, forget my name, but they'll remember, oh wait, I saw this lady and she talked about this, and here's why I laughed, or that reminded me of my cousin or my sister, or it was something that I could relate to. And being able to be that to people, that's what keeps me in the business, and what I enjoy most about being a comedian, and why I'm glad I get to do the things that I do. Because I mean, it's going around and from night to night to night, even though I might be saying some of the same material, it's a different audience, it's a different collection of people, and they came there for a different reason, and maybe they have something that they have going on at home, or they just found out that somebody in their family's sick, or maybe their kids were crabby all day, and then they get to come out and feel better for a little while.
That's
and
cool.
I got to be a part of that. So
That's
it's
awesome.
really cool.
Nice. What's your favorite Star Wars?
My favorite Star Wars, it's, okay, I'm gonna bring up this poster because you guys said I could bring it. So I have this, and so this is my favorite Star Wars. So it's, of course, I have reasons why I like all of the Star Wars, like even the Jar Jar Binks Star Wars, and I get to that story. I have reasons, but you know, when my mom, the first movie I ever saw is when she took me to go see Star Wars, you know, A New Hope, and we're growing up in Phoenix, Arizona, and you're standing there and you see them, you know, you see Luke looking out on this desert planet, and he's just this quirky kid that's just trying to figure out what his future is going to be. I just felt like I could kind of relate, where you feel like, well, I'm here and I know I have these quote unquote responsibilities, but I really just want adventures. And to be able to go off on that adventure and follow Luke and do all these things and follow Leia, that was super, super exciting, you know, to me. And so for New Year's, my girlfriend Tiffany and I were going to be performing at the New Hope Cinema Grill, and it isn't actually a movie theater, so we're like, okay, we wanted a movie poster. And so a good friend of mine, Doug Kalberg, he's a local comic book writer and artist in town, and so I was like, Doug, can you make us a poster? And so the fact that I get to be Luke Skywalker, a gender swap version of him, and hang out, and that my friend gets to be Leia, you know, Cinnamon Buns Leia, that was cool.
It's kind of like the cartoon in, what's the holiday special?
Yes. Oh my
that?
God, I love the holiday special. The holiday special, if people have not seen the Star Wars holiday special, you should see it. They do a couple of charity showings every year here in the Twin Cities, usually at Bryan Lake Bowl, and they kind of thing.
That's the first place I saw it. And it was probably the funniest thing I've ever seen.
Right, and so you can see it on YouTube, but it's not the same as going.
Right, you gotta see it with people.
Yeah, and having that hive mentality and seeing people that have seen it over and over and over again. Because I remember because I'm a lady of a certain age, I can remember when those holiday specials were super like destination programming when we were little kids, where you're like, we're all gonna sit down and just the special Love Boat holiday thing, and the Star Wars holiday special like came on the night, you know, back in the day, it came on the night that the Hulk and all these other geek things came on, and I could just imagine watching it and watching the beginning credits to that, and you're like, this is gonna be neat. Look, there's Han Solo, and there's Luke, and it's Chewie, and then you go, wow, and then it did what all those holiday specials did, is like took some weird acid trip turn.
It didn't even take a turn. It was there from the beginning because was it Chewie's family?
Yes.
Talks like their dialogue
but
for like the first 9 minutes with no subtitles.
Exactly. It's just them hanging out on the planet,
talking,
and kind of thing.
What's their language?
Kind of thing. Well, you know, and I should know that because it's not Wookiee. There's a word for it, and I can't remember. So all
whatever
my
it is,
friends are out there. I'm gonna get like
first,
super fact checked, right? And so, and just so that to be clear, for real, it's them having normal family interactions, but them just Wookiees talking and nobody knowing what they're talking about.
Then, like,
but you get it though.
Jefferson airplane.
Comes in later
and does like a hologram.
Yes, and there's like some weird scene, and it's all like Harvey Korman plays every other character, and B. Arthur's in it, and all of these things like just happen, and it's just
amazing.
It's very that time period. And I just love it. I love to see. I watch it every Christmas I go see.
Yeah. And you got tell us about your headshots that you brought.
So, you know, when you go to comedy clubs, a lot of times you'll see, they'll have the comedians' headshots up in the world and up on the wall. And I have this, and it has a cheesy frame in it, and I didn't pick the cheesy frame, but one of the cool places to perform here in the Twin Cities.
Did you write something funny on it?
No, I didn't. And so it just has, you know, but this is one of the first headshots I took when I moved to Minnesota and started doing comedy. And so there's a club over in St. Paul called the Joke Joint, and it's one of my favorite places to perform, but they're losing their lease and they're looking for a new location. And so they have all of us who headline there, they had our pictures up on the wall. And so since they're moving, my girlfriend was like worried that all of these were gonna end up in a landfill or something, so she snatched it for me.
So you're temporarily holding it.
Yes, until when they find a new location, I will bestow it back on the owners of the Joke Joint, and they can put it back up if they are so inclined.
Speaking of comedians, who are your favorite comedians?
I have to say, you know, new like comedians. It's the Wanda Sykes of the world. and the Ellen DeGenereses and the Paula Poundstones, because I always liked when I was younger watching them just be them. And especially as I've watched Wanda, just because she could do so much, and she was performing, but she's just her. And that's one of the things that I like so much. I mean, when I was younger, my mom had like all of the albums, like she had all of the Bill Cosby albums. So I grew up listening to him and the way that he would weave these stories, and people would just be, I remember me just sitting there and just hanging on every word of this story and wanting to be able to do that and have people listen to you and think that you were funny through that whole thing. And so, when you have a scenario with all of the stuff that he's going through now, it does make you sad, but it reminds you that just because we're funny doesn't mean we're all good people, and you still have to make different decisions and see what you're going to be as a person. And I listened back through when a lot of the Bill Cosby stuff started really coming into the light, and listening back through his bits, and just to see if they held up, because there's stuff that you like when you're younger that when you listen to it when you're older, you're like, okay, maybe I don't like it as much, or there might be TV shows that you're like, well, that doesn't hold up. And it actually made me even more sad, because I still do think that he is so talented. And listening back to those bits, and I remember all of his signature bits, like him talking about Noah and chocolate cake and all these things that made me laugh, just still.
The dentist.
Yeah, they're just brilliant. And it's just so sad that you end up being not as sparkly on the inside as a person as you are, and as talent shows what you want to believe about somebody.
Yeah. And speaking of doing good things when you're not doing your comedy, you've been involved with a lot of nonprofits. The first one, for example, the Red Affair. Tell us about that. So
the Red Affair is an annual event that the folks over at Jungle Red Salon and Gallery started 4 years ago. And they, the owner, Suzanne, and her family, they just really wanted to do something to help youth here in the Twin Cities. And specifically, they deal with an organization called Avenues for Homeless Youth. And they really work with teenagers that end up in that homeless situation, and giving them a stable environment where they can be, and giving them that leg up so they can get back into school, they can get back into life and have a safe environment. Because not only do you end up being in an unsafe environment if you end up on the street for whatever reason, that's how a lot of the human trafficking happens here in the Twin Cities and things. So they started this 4 years ago, where they have an event where they have different bands come out and perform. They do all the other cool things you do at those things, like there's a silent auction and a live auction, and so they had me involved just doing bits and pieces over the last few years, and so this will be the second year that I'm their primary host, and I'm just glad. You can get all that information at redaffair.org and come out and hang out. It's going to be a great event. And I'm also very fortunate that I have the time to be able to give back and be involved and donate to some other great children's charities in town. Like I work with the Pacer Center, and the Pacer Center not only has these great programs where they work with families and children with disabilities and making sure that they get the tools and resources they need. They also have the National Bullying Prevention Center. So if you're a kid that's being bullied, or you're a family that's dealing with bullying in your community, they have great resources for you that you can go ahead and tap to on their website. And I also work with the Autism Society of Minnesota, which is another great organization that really has great resources for families here in the Twin Cities, because you just kind of start to feel isolated, I think, in a lot of these things. And you said you have kids, and so you know how quickly things, you're already just dealing with, how do I not break them? How do I, how can I give them the best that I can? And then sometimes you end up in these scenarios where you need a little extra help. So I'm glad that these resources are out there for people. And I'd like to encourage families to don't feel like you have to do it by yourself, because you do start to feel isolated and alone, and that you just think that as a parent, that's what it's supposed to be. I'm supposed to be exhausted, I'm supposed to be tired, and I don't want to say, if I need a little bit of extra help, I don't want that to reflect on my kids or act like I'm, saying that there's something wrong with my kids. It's not that. It's sometimes it is okay to say, I don't, I didn't get a manual when I had these kids, and life's taking a different journey than I thought it was going to be. And going, there are some people out there that have gone through it already. So being able to use them as a resource, I think that's great.
Cool. And the Geek Show podcast, it's been on a hiatus lately, but you said that it's kind of in construction,
right?
And there might be some changes coming soon.
Like so many comedians out there, I had to have a podcast, and mine is currently Your Geek Show. But there are a lot, and I'm glad. There are now a lot more people talking about geek topics than there used to be. And
the geeks are now the cool people.
Right. And I don't even want to say that we're the cool people, because I do feel like sometimes geeks feel like, you know what, we got bullied or picked on when we were kids, and so now we are in a position of authority, so we don't want to be inclusive. And I'm glad that more people feel included in this. I want there to be more movies like, you know, the female version of the Ghostbusters, so that women can see themselves in that. I want Wonder Woman to do well. I'm so excited. I saw Black Panther 3 times, because it is not just a great movie that focuses on characters of colors. It's just a great movie. And the fact that we're making these fantastic geek films now, I think that's good for everybody. You know, it's like, because before, I mean, I grew up going, no, look, I know that it looks really dumb, but you should give it a shot. And because geek movies they weren't great movies, you know, so I liked them because I knew the source material, or I was really excited, and it was me explaining why all my friends should like them. But now we're making amazing films. And so I want them to continue, and for more people to be able to do it. And I like that now when people go see Star Wars, there's multiple characters there, and you can see yourself reflected on the big screen, and there's more women that are out there. So I'm full on board with this. So whatever your geek flag is, I want to be able to wave it for you.
And if you're a geek, the CW Twin Cities is the place to be.
Yes,
it's
Flash,
true. Arrow, Supergirl,
right.
Legends of Tomorrow.
It is so fun. And it's like, and I've watched all of those. I will be honest, Legends of Tomorrow I fell off on. I tried really hard, and then I had,
we'll
I'm going to give it another, I'm going to give it another shot. But even like when the CW comes up with the show, I'm one of those people, I give everything a shot. Like I was all on board with Beauty and the Beast, and I was like, oh, but I will try everything. Like I'm one of those people, I'm like, I will at least give it a full season before I go.
Okay. All right. Well, we got to win you back on Legends of Tomorrow.
Definitely.
But,
I'm ready. I'm ready.
Nice. So where can people learn more about your tour dates and everything else that you have going on?
You can always go to my website. It's missshannan.com, and it's Shannan with an A, so because my mom is a little quirky. So it's missshannan.com. So I make sure all the things are there. And, you know, I mean, like everybody else, you can always find me on Facebook. And, you know, I try to tweet things. And if you follow me on Instagram, it's a combination of, oh, she said something funny, and you know, pictures of me and my kid doing silly face practice out at some restaurant or something like that. So it's a good time.
Miss Shannan, thank you very much for being with us. And
My
Twin Cities,
pleasure.
make sure you check out missshannan with an A.com.